How's it going? Today we're going to be discussing a tool that is usually used in electronic dance music. It's the Arpeggiator. But today we're going to be discussing it and applying it towards orchestral sample libraries. Now, I never would have thought to put the two together, certainly, but it's a really cool, neat tool. It can give you some quick inspiration. If you want to use it as a compositional tool, you can. I kind of tend to use it more as just an inspirational guide to help me figure out some rhythms or some different patterns or whatever that I might want to use in my compositions, and kind of take it from there. But oftentimes I'm pretty happy with this initial result. So let's get to it. I'm in Apple's Logic, and how I kind of came across this technique was there's a sample library that's already kind of does this kind of thing. It's called Action Strings, and what it is these are pre-recorded patterns that real instruments are playing, and so it's going to sound very realistic because it really is a realistic instrument. And they've broken it up so that you can vary what patterns are being played. Like right now, this is okay. It's that one, and it'll cycle through it, and then it'll start it again. But you can use these key switches it's kind of cool. You can click on this and it has a bunch of variances. And see, like this pattern, that right there has slurs in there that it would be very difficult to do realistically from a real sample library that wasn't already pre-recorded. So it's got a lot of potential for lots of cool things, and I like it. But I thought, well, what if I wanted to have my own, design my own pattern and make it sound pretty good? And it's almost impossible. You have to play it, but then you have to program all of the various MIDI articulations in there to make it sound realistic. And I was like, there's got to be a little bit better way. And so I happened to be working on an electronic dance music piece, and I thought, this Arpeggiator thing is really cool. Now this is Apple's Arpeggiator. It's built-in. You can use it. It comes with a Logic, but they have all sorts of other arpeggiation plugins that you can get for free or on for a pretty inexpensive price. But they all do the same thing. Is they manipulate the MIDI data coming into it and into different patterns and different chords and different rhythms. So and they have lots of things. They've got cycles. The cycles are non-chords. The grooves are not chords either. But then you have chord grooves, which are very cool. And you have it's very cool. I'm not going to go into each one of these, but it's cool. So it goes through up to 16 beats, and then the higher you can adjust these bars here. The higher the bar, the more accented that note or that beat is, and so you can create pretty complex things. The note order, you can have them go up, down, both up and down before as it cycles together like that, and then you can have it just kind of mix it up. And you can also do it yourself, and you can select how many octaves it's going to be doing, how much variation do you want in them. It's quite cool. So I thought, well, I'm going to apply this groove or this Arpeggiator to this instrument. Now this is in Kontakt 5. There's a whole series or set of the Vienna Symphonic Library samples, and actually the ones I'm using are actually from Kontakt 2 because they use a legacy version from there that's an older sample set, but I kind of like it a little bit better because I'm used to it more, and the sound's still pretty good. So what I did is I took the cellos, which is I have a staccato sample, which is they have an alternating 1 and 2, so it's up and down stroke. So you don't get the machine gun effect as much. But that's something you do have to worry about when you're doing sample libraries. If you're doing arpeggiation, you have to make sure you've got round robin or alternating samples, because otherwise it can get kind of weird. That's also why you mess around with the accents, because the accents will also help reduce the round robin effect if you don't have an alternating or round robin type of sample. So here's what this sounds like with the cellos. So I've got the arpeggiator. See? Now see, as I'm playing these notes, the chord, you're never hearing all these things playing at the same time, but what it's doing, it's varying which notes are going to be getting the beat, and so, but it's really kind of in a cool little groove, okay, so that sounds pretty cool. So I thought, well, what would that sound like with I think these are strings. I'm going to try this real quick. Yeah, so this is a pretty simple one, this one actually. You see, it's playing all of the notes, but in a pattern, and anyway, so it'll whatever note you're playing, it'll go through that pattern, and anyway, it's quite cool. So I thought, well, that works really well with strings. What about percussion? And so I went over and I went into the Garritan Personal Orchestra, and I loaded up the bass drum sample, and then I put it through this arpeggiation sample, this little groove I created for it, and when you play it, so pretty cool, okay? And that sounds like, I mean, I'm only holding it down, but it sounds like someone's actually beating that with a mallet. It's pretty cool. So you put all those together, and then it sounds pretty realistic. Well, so I liked the way it sounded with the section strings pretty well, and also the percussion. So I thought, well, what about a solo kind of a string? So I happen to have this library from Garritan Libraries called the Solo Stradivari. Now they don't make it anymore. They don't offer it anymore. It's an older one, but it sounds pretty realistic. I like it. Anyway, so it does have staccato, the ability to do staccato. So I thought, well, what would that sound like in an arpeggiator? So I put it through this this kind of pattern, and so when I play it, now this might be a little too fast for a real violinist, but I don't think so. Anyway, but so now this goes up an octave. So if I were to switch it down just one, it stays there. So I like it better when it switches up a little bit. So then it goes down 2 octaves instead of 1. Anyway, it's just kind of cool. So I thought, well, that sounds pretty cool. And so I actually made, so I recorded this. I'm gonna unselect that. Okay, I'm gonna play this. It's kind of cool. So I have this playing, but I thought, well, that sounds cool, but what if I added it with the violin sections of, it has, this is from the VSL. This is, again, staccato 1 and 2 alternating samples. So if I add that in with it, so if I play it back there at the beginning, now see, it's actually a clone of exactly what's playing here. So that's a pretty realistic sound. It doesn't sound to me as good as this solo, but it's not bad. Okay, so then I added the cellos in there too. So let's go back to the beginning of the cellos. So the Arpeggiator one for the cellos, it's like that. So now if I wanted to, anyway, it's pretty cool. But sometimes I've also noticed that the Arpeggiator, if you're using multiple instruments in sample libraries, sometimes there's some lag, and you have to kind of fix that. So I thought, well, this works really well with strings. Let's hear what it would sound like with a different sample library. And so I have this one. It's called Voxos. It's a choir library actually, and I'll take off the Arpeggiator. But they have samples for women, samples for men. And you have staccato and sustain samples. So they've done a really good job recording all these in a whole bunch of different dynamic levels. But they also have this thing called a phrase builder. And they've pre-recorded these syllables in all sorts of different dynamic levels. And you can arrange them into, you can have up to, I think, 12 different phrases. Yeah. And well, you can make up your own little syllable or words. Now, these are Latin sounding words. There's only a few of these that you can actually create Latin words with that make any sense. It's not like you're going to be grammatically correct, but the idea here is you can have something that sounds very cool, that sounds kind of epic. But they also have, okay, so I'm just going to play. This is just these are the women. Now, if you have any legato, it's going to keep on that same syllable. And they use the modulation wheel as the volume. But they also have these whispers. The men, and here's the women. So I thought, well, okay, that sounds kind of cool. So let's listen to the staccato real quick so that you can hear what that sounds like. Amen. So, but the staccato is kind of cool. So, well, let's make up a little groove with the short samples on this. And so I came up with this. So I started out this groove by just doing just the whispers. And then I added, so the women would be doing this part. Now, as you're playing, you see those chords underneath the beats. Those are where all the notes that you're playing at a time are played together. So that's the reason why this is a chord-based one. So as I add more notes, the pattern includes all of the notes that you're doing in that kind of complex pattern. But every time that you see the chord part hit the beat, all four of them are playing at the same time. So, see, it really kind of gives you some nice add some nice variances of the rhythms. It's something I probably never would have come up on my own. So sounds pretty cool. So what I did is and the more you play with this is very intensive on your CPU, and I'm also recording screen capturing, so it'll start to bit out here if I play more. But what I did is I recorded that little phrase right there, and then I added strings, I added percussion, and so I'm going to play that what that sounds like, but it's just going to be the pre-recorded or the recorded ones, because it's a little too much to handle for my CPU. And I actually have a pretty beefy CPU, but it gets pretty bad. So let's go ahead and play that. Make sure nothing else is being okay to play. All right, so here we go. Now those strings that I played earlier are where I got this from, so, or where I drew from those. Now you see I actually made a little mistake where I played that note a little too early and it cut it off. Now, there are 4 notes being played. And here comes the rest of the stuff coming in. So I also brought in men doing a little pattern of their own down below here. Here comes the percussion. So every instrument you hear right now is being manipulated by the arpeggiator. And you just can vary it up as much as you want to, but again, you really have to know what the instruments are capable of and what they should sound like. So, now that has a lot of potential. Now I could leave it like that. I could make it into something else. But I just wanted to get that's a really. I mean, I literally put that together in about 5 minutes. Because the arpeggiator basically does all of the really complex work. You just have to figure out, okay, well, it sounds kind of cool, and so you just mess around with the different chords. So what'd you think? I personally am very impressed with how the arpeggiator was able to manipulate the short samples and create a pretty realistic performance, to my ears at least. Now, you do have to have a working knowledge of orchestration and how instruments are to be played, but even if you don't, it'll still give you an idea, maybe some ideas of where to go next in your compositions if you're having kind of a mental block. At least that's what happened with me. And so I never ever thought of using this tool in an orchestral setting, but it's amazing to me. It works great with short samples for strings, for woodwinds, also for percussion especially. So this gives you an extra little tool in your palette that you can use whenever you need something different. If you like these kind of videos, please hit the subscribe button. I do plan on doing quite a bit more of these technique videos on how I go about making music with the software and with the hardware that I use. Thank you very much for watching, and have a wonderful day.